Okay, here's our pattern, and our pattern has 4 sections. They're coded A, see each section starts with A, and then a number B, C, and D. We're going to start with section D. Each of these pieces are marked. You can see D1, D2, D3. You can work the sections in any order. So we'll start with this section. The numbers are going to tell us the order in which we should add the pieces. And so D1 is the first piece of this section. Now with the first piece of each section, you start by gluing just to hold the fabric onto the pattern. You only do that with the first piece of each section. So we will only do that with D1. Now I've written on here some pre-cut sizes just to make it easier. You don't have to do that, but just to make it simpler, I know that a 3 by 8 inch piece of fabric will amply cover this shape. So I've got this pile of my pre-cuts, and I see here I'll need 6 of them for the entire thing. So I'll just grab one, and this will be my number 1 piece. So to glue it, I'm going to glue this on the back of the pattern because our design is going to evolve and come forth on the back, on the blank side of the pattern. So I need to glue this on here. And I want to make sure I cover this D1 shape entirely and with a 1/4 inch extra. Now, when I kind of hold this up a little, I can see that line, and I can just make a rough outline here. If you wanted, if you weren't sure, sometimes if I can't see a line, I'll just poke it, the line outlining this shape with a pin, and then I can see the little holes. But I don't really need to do that. So this fabric that I'm using for D1 needs to cover this piece, this section of the section, this piece of the section entirely with a 1/4 inch extra. Now here you can see there's already a 1/4 inch on the top and this side, but I need to make sure I cover all the way down to here and here. So, and I need to have the right side out. Okay, so I'm going to put just a couple dabs of glue stick. I'm going to make sure I keep the glue stick in the section. I don't want it flopping over, so don't put it on the fabric because you don't know where that might land. So just put a little bit, don't need a ton. And as long as this fabric is covering this entire shape, I've got just barely a 1/4 inch, but I've got plenty there. So that will work fine. Our first piece, D1, is now added. Now we're going to get ready to add the next piece, which is D2. The first step is to crease on the line. You're going to crease on the line between D1 and D2 because we're adding D2 to D1. That line is drawn as green on this section just to help you. So you put a piece of cardstock right on that line, and that will enable you to get a really nice crease. And after you get that crease, the next step, you can look at it if you want and make sure it's good. Yeah, that's good. So you keep it folded like that though. Take your tag out, your cardstock tag, whatever. Take that out. And now you got your crease. So now the next step is to trim. You're going to trim off this extra fabric here parallel to this fold, this crease you just made, with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm lining up my ruler at a 1/4 inch, no fear, trim. Okay, the next step is to trace. Just like I traced the outline of my D1 shape, I want to know where my D2 shape is. So I'm going to trace that on the back here, and because I marked these lines in color to help you out here, I can see that pretty easily. But just like with piece 1, if you needed to, you could use a pin or just kind of hold it up. And it does not have to be exact. You're just trying to get a rough outline of this shape that you're going to cover next. Okay, our next step is to position the fabric that we're going to attach, the fabric that will cover this area D2. So to do this, your piece looks like this. You want to go ahead and fold it back on your crease that you already made and orient your pattern so you can see the line that you sketched there on the back of the pattern. And this piece D2 needs a 4x10 piece connected to it. You can see more than enough fabric there to cover it, but it's good to give yourself a little leeway when you're starting out, and don't cut it too tight. This will make it easier. So I'm going to position this fabric. It has to be right sides together against this fabric that I've already attached against D1. So you want a straight edge. Now you can see this isn't cut perfectly. It'll totally work. If you wanted to, you could take your rotary and clean that up, but you don't have to. The important thing though that you do have to do is make sure that you've got right sides together, that you've got this new piece that you're adding, D2, is just lined up with the raw edge of D1, and that you have a 1/4 inch around this shape. This shape here is D2 that we traced. This is what we're needing to cover with this piece of fabric. So we have to position it to cover that plus a 1/4 inch. All right, so we have to make sure that we have a 1/4 inch here, a 1/4 inch here. Oh, well, you've got, the pattern has a 1/4 inch here, so it's mainly this shape. And this is pretty easy. I've got plenty of room. I could scooch it over to here and I'd waste a little less. I'd have a little bigger scrap. Doesn't matter. So this is positioned fine. Maybe that's a little tight there. And again, if this bothered me, I could trim this a little straighter, but that's not critical. All right, so now this is positioned. You can, at this point, just carry it to the sewing machine like this, or if you prefer to pin, you can carefully, keeping this in place, flip your pattern back and go ahead and pin. Now be aware when you're pinning that, that you're going to be sewing on this green line that you creased on. That's the stitching line to attach D1 to D2. So don't, make sure your pin's not in the way, but you can also pull that out when you get to the sewing machine. So your choice, carry it to the sewing machine like this carefully, and then when it's on the bed of the machine, flop it out, or flop it out and pin it. Either way works. Okay, so the next step is to sew, and I've actually just done that here. Sewing is actually the easy part of foundation paper piecing because you're just following the line. You can start on either end of the line. You're using a very short stitch length, and you want to start just a couple stitches ahead. You can see here I started just a little ahead of this line, and when I got to the end, again, I went a little past. Some people backstitch. I prefer not to. It's such a short stitch length, and just go a little ahead and a little behind, and it'll be fine. The other thing when you're sewing is to make sure that your fabric is laying flat. Your pattern will be flat like this, so you fold it out again, and your pieces should be nice and flat. So you want to make sure you don't sew like that and catch something under it. So that's all there is to it. Follow that line. Stitch along that line to join D1 to D2. So after you've sewn along that line, your next step is to turn the pattern over, flip that fabric out, and press. I've already pressed this. And that's it. You've attached your first, well, you've sewn on your first piece. And after that, you just continue to add each piece using the same series of steps. The first step being to crease. So my next thing I would do here is I would crease on the line between D2 to D3. Now I'm starting to attach D3, right? So just crease on that line and then trim parallel to the fold with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then trace the next shape that you're going to be adding, which is D3, a 4x10 piece. I've already traced it there. Grab your piece of fabric and position it right sides together, making sure you've got this shape covered plus a 1/4 inch. Then you would flip this out, pin if you want, and sew right on this next line to connect D3, and so on and so forth. That's all there is to it. Foundation paper piecing.